our AI Unplugged Without Borders video podcast series, part of the Transatlantic AI Exchange. We are kicking off a new era of knowledge sharing with our move to video podcasts. Here, you get to hear more experts in a relaxed setup, diving into the nuts and bolts of deep tech and artificial intelligence. This shift to a more visual and flexible format means that you can actually tune in whenever and wherever suits you best, bringing the world of AI to life through dynamic storytelling. Get ready for a lineup of fascinating talks on deep tech and AI, seen through the lens of top tech minds across the ecosystem. Catch you in the next episodes of AI Unplugged Without Borders. Today, we are chatting with Christoph Burkhardt, whom we have met at the WeWork office in beautiful downtown San Francisco. Christoph is a Silicon Valley entrepreneur, and he's an author of multiple books and sought-after advisor by executives at global players such as Pfizer, BMW, Allianz, or Aldi. He's a regular guest lecturer at leading schools such as ETH Zurich, St. Gallen, or Stanford University here in Palo Alto. He has mentored over 300 startups and has, as a startup CEO, led a team of 90 through a successful global product launch. He specializes in emerging technologies, in impact innovation, and digital business models. Born and raised in Germany, the unconditional optimist made San Francisco his home over a decade ago. My name is Thomas Neubert. I am born and raised in Germany as well, a long-term entrepreneur living in Silicon Valley for now over 33 years, and I'm the founder of the Transatlantic AI Exchange. Hi, Chris.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you very much for taking the time joining our podcast. And it's called AI Unplugged Without Borders. And as we are both Germans, having been here for a very long time, yes, I think we have some interesting discussion points to go over.
Yeah.
And I appreciate your time. And with the intro that I just gave to our audience, I would like to start right with the first question. And the interesting thing that struck me at the beginning is your background. Your background is around cognitive science and economics. Now, how does that relate, and how did you end up in artificial intelligence?
Yeah, this is it's a fascinating time because I think a lot of fields are emerging and exchange ideas now. And for me, I come from the cognitive science because we try to build artificial brains by looking at how humans work. And so we took the algorithms that humans use to make decisions and tried to build cognitive systems around that. And that merged into AI. And then I started looking at the bigger picture, and then economics came into that. But I was never a technologist. I'm not a techie. And I think this is a very interesting time where these fields come together and exchange everything they've been working on for the last 30, 40 years.
Interesting. Now, on top of that, you had published recently a new book called Don't Be a Robot. What is that all about?
That Don't Be a Robot is pretty much the idea is very simple, but it is if you behave, if you think and act like a machine, you will be replaced by one. So the message has to be don't be a robot, and then we have to figure out, but what are we then? Because we kind of, what makes a human being valuable in a world of AI? Now, what can machines do that we can't? What can they do better? And what is our role in this game? What makes us so valuable that in business, we will still have a place? And the question is not whether we are being replaced. The question is, how does this machine-human interaction and the collaboration between humans and machine, how's that going to unfold, and how's it going to look in the future? And that's what that book was about. So
when did you write the book?
2019.
2019. So this was definitely way before ChatGPT moment.
It was. And it's interesting to see now how this unfolds. And for me, it comes way faster than I expected. I mean, I made predictions in the book that go in the same direction. And I see this collaboration between humans and machines, but it's working way better than I thought it would. Okay. So we're moving faster in working with the machines than expected.
Now, robots is one thing, but you look at applied AI, you look at generative AI, you look at robotics. I worked at robotics for a couple of years at Intel, and I loved it. But if you look at AI and robotics, I mean, there's more to AI than robotics, right?
For sure.
There's the Hollywood movies. People who may not know too much about AI don't trust Hollywood. It's not all about the Terminator. But can you maybe differentiate a little bit about AI in general and how it reflects in our life in general, which is not necessarily all about robotics taking over?
No, not at all. I think robots we use as a symbol for AI being smart, because if it looks human and it behaves humanly, then we can accept that this is almost like a person. And when you talk to ChatGPT, you get the same feeling that there is a person. But it's kind of easier for us to understand a robot than it is for us to understand AI. But it's very interesting to look at what actually goes under this umbrella term of AI. And of course, we have very different things. Right now, we're only focusing on generative AI. Pretty much that's everywhere. And that is the counterpart to what I would say is creative human intelligence. So humans have a creative element where we can make up things about the future that are based on our unique experience of the past. A machine takes all the knowledge available and generates an image or generates a pattern, a video, a text. Doesn't matter. It's all data, but it generates that. And the combination of the two intelligences is really valuable. This is when the creative element of the question to the machine and the machine's answer go together. So the creative element and the generative element come together. Yeah. When you look at robotics, for sure you have AI that works completely differently. This is more the AI that we see down here on the street with Waymo driving around with driverless cars. So these are machines that obviously whenever there is a mistake and they learn something, they share that with all other cars immediately. So this is a very different kind of intelligence. But this is not generative AI. Yeah. This is processing intelligence. And we need that. For sure, we will see a lot of that. We're going to look back and ask like, well, how we ever allowed human drivers. But we will not do the same in generative AI. Yeah. I think there's a huge difference. Generative AI is making us better. The AI on the street is helping us not to do things that we shouldn't do. Yeah. Like driving. Because a Waymo car has 10,000 years driving experience. Yeah. We will never get there.
So just to clarify for the audience, you mentioned the name Waymo. So for us, it's like natural, right? Of course, Waymo, we know what Waymo is. Yeah. Most people may not even know what Waymo is. Waymo is a self-driving car that has been legally allowed to drive in San Francisco certain routes. Yes. And as a tourist or as a person, you can actually call, instead of an Uber driver or Lyft, you can actually use an app and you call the Waymo, and believe it or not, there's a car coming without a driver, and it's a very strange feeling the first time that you sit in the back and this car actually drives you through the streets of San Francisco. And I just wanted to clarify that because when I walked over here, I was on 2nd and Mission, and there was this younger guy coming with a backpack. I could see he was a tourist or something, had a coffee in his hand. So the Waymo came down the street, and then he looked at it, and then he literally was in front of me. He was coming towards me. He turned around with a coffee in his hand, and he was trying to chase the Waymo to the next corner just to take a picture to see the driverless car. So Waymo for us locally is not a big deal, to be honest. Yeah. But it is still a fascinating thing that applies to artificial intelligence, robotics, and autonomous driving all together in one piece.
And I think it shows one example of AI that explains a lot that's happening right now, and that is all AI is trained by humans. Yeah. It's not that we build a car that can drive autonomously and we give it all the rules to drive. This is the major difference. Yeah. It just watches us drive and then copies that. So it makes all the mistakes that we make. It just does that with more experience over time. That's why it becomes a better driver. It's not naturally a better driver. I think this is what people need to get right, because I've been in a Waymo just recently that definitely made a huge mistake. Like there was too much traffic in the lane we were in, and it tried to go somewhere else. I'm like, this was illegal. You should not be doing this.
And you sit in the back.
Yeah, you sit in the back and cannot do anything.
That's an interesting experience. Yeah. Okay. So we have a bunch of other questions I would like to go over. So you work with a lot of companies around the world implementing AI solutions. How is AI changing the game? And what makes a good AI strategy? And to be honest with you, why do we need a strategy? Because AI is a technical feature. We have other technical features, But why do we need a strategy around this for a corporation, for the Mittelstand SMB, and even for a startup company?
Because the strategy is required, or it helps a lot. It's not required. You can play without a strategy right now because we're just at the beginning of seeing this taking off. So right now we have a lot of what I call point solutions. So you take something that's not cognified and you put AI on top. Just like we took a letter and we turned it into an email by digitalizing it. But this is still just a letter. It's now digital, but it's still just a letter. So this is just a point solution. If you think that the same movement over time turns into something like social media that changes lives and it changes politics and society, this is disruption on a system level. And that requires a strategy to respond to because your entire way of working changed. And this will happen with AI. We don't know where and how yet, but because right now we're just cognifying different things. Okay, now it can talk. It can produce text. It can produce images or video. But this is still just taking something that's not AI and put a little bit of AI on top. It's still not changing the system. Yeah. But for sure, organizations will never look the same way. So what it is changing is, for sure, the rules of this change are everything that can be automated will be automated. Everything that's left is very complex decision-making or complex problem solving. And these two parts will be the main jobs of humans in that future. And for that, you need a strategy because you need to prepare your organization to be flipped into one where your only job is to ask really good questions and then solve really hard problems and make decisions under complete uncertainty. And we know humans are neither prepared nor are they very good at it. Mm-hmm. Most humans don't ever want to do this. Yeah. 8 hours of decision making a day and you have no idea what to do. Like the options all look the same. That's hard. And it's exhausting, and you don't want to take responsibility for any of this. But this is what we need to prepare for, because that system change for sure is coming.
You mentioned to me earlier that at the moment you are spending, every other month or so in Europe and teach and speak about AI implementation and things like that. Tell us a little bit more about who at the moment where you see the highest needs for education and what kind of experiences are you coming back with that you would like to address and share with the audience?
So to me, the exchange between Europe and the US is very valuable because there are different ways of doing things. And that's always a good thing.
Absolutely.
Right? You have the same.
That's why we are at the Transatlantic AI Exchange,
exactly.
Right?
It's so important that we have this.
Yeah.
And it's especially Silicon Valley goes one direction and they're running and running and running and they don't look back. They don't look right or left. They just go. And Europe is not going at all. They're looking and they're scared. And they're thinking about all those scenarios that could go wrong. And somewhere in the middle, there's a balance of what makes the most sense and what's the most strategic way to deal with this. Yep. And this is what we try to figure out. I think right now we're seeing, for sure, data-driven companies are the first to use this technology. So they're always the first to automate because they're already data-driven. So companies that have been collecting data for a while now definitely have an advantage. Companies that are just starting to understand that collecting data, even if you don't know what the data is good for, will have an advantage in the world of AI. They need to pick up speed. The other thing to ask is whether it's certain functions that will be disrupted first. And I think this is very interesting to look at, and it's not that clear. We saw a lot of marketing automation in the beginning, and for sure AI is running targeted ads. That makes a lot of sense, right? So Netflix recommendation algorithms, like what movie do you want to watch next? These are the first things because there's so much data available that it's easy to build an algorithm around that.
And they're all personalized.
Yeah.
Mine looks different than my son's or my wife's or yours.
Definitely. And the individualization is something that we take from Netflix, and we expect that in other areas of life too. Yeah. So I call these the indirect effects of AI, right? So direct effects, for sure, we become more predictable. And we get used to being more predictable. Indirect effects, we take that and we expect individualization everywhere now. Yeah. So companies that today still get away with sending 500,000 emails, and this is always the same email to every customer, that will not work. That will not work in a world where everybody is used to getting the email that's written just for me. But in the world of AI, it's totally possible to do that. So we will be used to that, and we don't want anything else. So customization, individualization will come everywhere. So now you can look at industries, like look at fashion, look at furniture design. Some of my clients in that field, out of a sudden, they get hit by customers who want everything to be customized. And out of a sudden, you have companies like IKEA seeing, oh, there's a new demand that we did not see coming. And now we have to individualize and customize all our furniture. In fashion, even more. Like, why would we buy anything that's not made just for us if we're used to that in every other aspect? So what begins as Netflix and then Amazon product recommendations becomes an expectation that we bring to every business in the world.
So if I have an established business, a successful established business, I should not lean back and watch it from the sideline, because ultimately some other competitor, somebody from left field, from a startup, brings this individualization to the customer. And in a few years, if I don't have it, most likely my business is at stake.
Definitely. Yeah. And especially in industries or fields where we don't see direct application of AI right now, the indirect effects will hit them for sure, because customer expectations are changing faster than ever before.
Okay. Do you have one or two examples from customers that you are talking to? I know you're probably under NDA, but some use cases for the audience to make it a little bit more tangible?
For sure. So some of the mega trends that come out of this is, besides the segment of one, the individualization of everything, we getting used to not waiting anymore. So if companies in logistics pick up speed because it's easy for them to use data to improve their efficiency. But that means goods are moving faster, meaning we're getting used to getting things faster. And what that means for some customers, I mean, we have in Europe as well as here, the demand for highly qualified workers is very high, and there's a shortage everywhere, here as well as in Europe. And that shortage, some people will say, okay, AI will help with that because we can replace some of the people that we can't get. The other thing, though, is that if you find talent and you want to hire them, you have to move faster than you have before, or else someone else will take them. Meaning the whole process of recruiting someone all the way to getting them the contract and getting the contract signed has to become so much faster because people are not used to waiting anymore. And this starts, again, with the direct effects of Amazon shipping stuff faster. Now we want work contracts to be faster. And that hits a lot of industries. The companies I work with in finance, for sure, see this everywhere. They need talent, and try to hire AI talent right now if you're an established corporation.
Yeah, it's almost impossible.
Yeah.
Interesting. There's opportunities then there, I have to say.
A lot.
Okay, so what sort of challenges or obstacle do you see with your clients facing AI right now? What should companies focus on first? And what are the right steps?
Yes. So in the implementation process there are things that we need to do to structure this process, because we either end up in decision paralysis where we don't make a decision about where to start, so we don't start. That's something I see with a lot of people. A lot of companies face that problem. And the bigger the company, the more people are involved in that decision, the harder it will get to that point where you say, now we start. And the other part is that the strategy that we're trying to build around AI needs to start with the internal processes. So one big obstacle is that, here's a shiny new tool that can do things for us. Now we let it do that. And then, this is magical. It's like people learning how to use email, and then they're out of a sudden sending way more emails than they used to send letters. So they're changing something that is not beneficial just because the tool can do it. Yeah. And that's a danger. So we need to look at the processes that make my business valuable or my job valuable, and then look at how can AI augment, how can AI help me do this better? Instead of saying, what can we do so AI replaces everything that we have? Ask, what makes us good, and how can AI help make this better? So how do we improve processes that already exist, and how can AI help with that?
So for processes, when you say processes, I'm thinking of, we started with the robots. Mm-hmm. Then I'm thinking about supply chain, manufacturing facilities for return. But if you look at processes in general, and I look at a corporation, even a small mid-sized company, there's processes like marketing campaigns, there is customer service, there's EHR for internal, and there's marketing. So actually this applies to almost everything.
Yes. That's why I would say analyze your own job and think about what are you actually doing all day, and where do you create the most value? And that should be the core process that you look at to ask, how can AI make this better? So if you're facing customers directly and you are in interaction with customers, how can an AI-empowered CRM system make you better at interacting with our customer? That's a cool question, because out of a sudden you're not asking, why do I need to put data in my CRM? I'm never going to look at this again. Now you're asking, okay, now AI is going to help me do my job better. So that's why we do this.
But when you say data, let's be very clear. What's the definition of data, and how good does the quality need to be? Because garbage in, garbage out. How do you address that?
Yeah, so of course, the more fact-based data is, the better it will work. But if you take the CRM example, that's the beauty today. AI understands what you're saying. AI is going to get a transcript of our session here. Yeah. It can summarize it, put it in a CRM with all the facts that we talked about. And then years later, we can search this and it will be available. So whenever you contact me, let's say you contact me in 5 years the next time, this will still pop up in my system because it is there and it is data. So the beauty is the data does not need to be structured anymore. It can be text, it can be video, it can be sound, doesn't matter anymore. We have enough intelligence to make sure that that data is valuable in the system.
Okay.
So garbage in, garbage out, yes, but that applies more to training the AI, yeah, not to the data that you put into a system that uses AI.
Yeah. Okay, got it. That reminds me, I listened to an interesting podcast interview with you a couple of days ago. And it struck me because you had some very interesting new tools, AI-enabled tools. Can you maybe share just quickly, the Otter AI and the few tools that an individual can use, or a small company, to be much more efficient? We just talked about the recording of this session or Zoom sessions and whatever. And you mentioned like 3 or 4 tools. I thought it was super cool.
Yeah.
And I think we should share it with the audience.
Yeah, especially because they work similarly, the tools, yes, right? So,
yes.
But whenever you can record people talk, that's a good application. So some of these tools they sit in your Zoom call and they give you a transcript and then they give you a summary, but you can tell the system beforehand what this meeting is likely about. So I can say, oh, this is a meeting where we discuss a project, and it will structure the entire meeting after the fact and says, like, these are the key takeaways from the session. These are the to-dos. These are the individual responsibilities. These are the next steps. And here is the timeline. So it creates a project plan just by listening to you. Yeah. And it doesn't need anything for that but ChatGPT in the background and then an interface with good prompts. Yeah. And so one thing I said in that session was you have to look at tools that allow you to change the prompt, because this will make it possible for you to build this around your process. Yeah. And of course, anything that can be turned into a transcript, you can do the same things with. So another tool for sure that I use a lot is like, I think associatively. So I want to just ramble about things that come to mind. And right now you structure me by giving me questions, but I use a tool called Talk Notes, and there are lots of them. But you just speak into your phone for 15, 20 minutes, just random ideas, and it will structure the whole thing for you. It will say, like, these were 5 points that you talked about, even though you talked about point 1 and then point 4, and then you went back to point 1. It knows that you just jumped. And I don't know I just jumped, and I don't want to think about that. I want to think about the content that I just produced. And this is super fast. Another tool I love is Superhuman. This email.
I don't know.
It's an email system that just, whenever I get an email in one line, it summarizes the entire email.
Superhuman.
Yeah. So
ladies, write that down. Superhuman. Never heard about it.
Instead of, just saying what this regarding, instead of me putting that title in, AI can just summarize whatever I write about. And it is better at that than we are. And it saves so much time.
So there's AudioPen, there's Fireflies, Otter AI, this new one. I learned something new right now.
I almost don't want to name them because in a few weeks they might be gone. there are 1,000 tools.
So make some notes. I hope that you will test them out. So this is very interesting. So the next one is a lot of people are skeptical about positive impact on that AI is going to have. How do you convince critiques that AI will make things better, not worse? I think to some extent we actually just talked about it in examples where for an individual it makes it better.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to the question you ask. If if we're still looking at examples where AI is completely replacing humans, then we're having a wrong discussion. So again, Waymo cars, yes, we will not have drivers anymore. And we don't need drivers. And that's just the way it is. But this is not generative AI. So the AI that we're going to use in our day-to-day jobs is going to be different from the AI that Waymo uses. And we need to make that differentiation so we understand where AI is going to create that real impact in our lives. And I think this is what we need to focus on if you want to convince people that there are benefits, there are massive benefits in both systems, but they're going to hit us in different ways. So now we're learning how to use AI, but it's not clear at all where this is going yet. We just know it's going to be everywhere. But in which ways? This is the people who run now and use these tools basically decide where this game is going. So if you say, oh, we want to use something that listens to me 24/7 and summarizes and saves everything that happens in my life, then this becomes a valuable tool and a lot of businesses will jump on that. But the strategy in the market doesn't exist yet. There's no one sitting there saying, this is where we want AI to go. We're all just going.
That reminds me a lot, actually, in the late 90s with the internet, right? We had no idea where this is all heading. We had a browser. Everybody was excited.
Yeah.
Everybody overnight turned into a .com company. Everybody seemed to be an expert within the internet at that time. And I see something very similar these days, good or bad. But at that time, nobody predicted how we were. Look at Netflix or Amazon didn't exist, right? We went to a bookstore and we are buying goods. We're buying cars. I mean, all kind of stuff online, customizing it, all that stuff. So this is going to be an interesting ride. Do you think that the effect on AI in general will be even bigger than the internet itself?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm convinced this is absolutely transformative to the way we live, and it's not just going to change businesses; it's going to change everything we do. Okay. And that's because it's so close to our own cognition. Yeah, and it will bring out a bigger need for us to be more in tune with our own emotions and how we understand what makes us human.
And also regulatory issues.
Oh, I mean, Europe is all over that. Yes. Yeah. And that's rightly necessary. So. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Interesting. This is an interesting one. You spoke about direct and indirect effects of AI. How are they changing and how do you do business in your view?
This I think, this is where AI really unfolds the biggest impact is through the indirect effects. And this is, humans work with expectations. We have expectations and we call them user needs, but they're really what we expect from a business, from an interaction with customer support. And all these expectations shift way faster than businesses can adopt. And so this is a real challenge to look at evolving customer expectations for the next 5 years. How are they going to change? And of course, we don't know everything, but some of the scenarios are way more likely than others. So waiting time will go down. Customers will be more informed. There will be more transparency about what's happening in an organization. You can't hide anything. The massive use of data also means we know more. And everybody will know more. Yeah. Users will know a lot more. Yeah. So adapt now to that. And don't think you can hide more in the future. It's going to be more transparent rather than less. And so these things are already visible. And so we can prepare right now for something that might just hit us in 3 years.
Interesting. Now, humans are mostly, on one hand, we are very impatient. On the other hand, we don't like change, right? I mean, that's the fact of life.
Yes.
How do you bring these two together in relation to the adoption of AI in general? From the content provider and the implementer to the user themselves. Are we going too fast, too overboard? Are we expecting too much, too fast? Or we need to tone everything down a little bit?
It's interesting how the hype unfolds and our attention is very limited. So what do we focus on right now is really interesting to look at. So generative AI right now is full on at the center of this discussion. And what that means is that a lot of things that are also happening are not at the center of the discussion. Right? So no one's looking right now what happens with metaverse or blockchain, but they're still evolving technologies. And they're not slowing down. they're just doing things quietly. And sometimes this causes more disruption than the thing we look at. And so it's interesting, and it's very important to keep all of them in mind, and also understand that they're all connected. Meanwhile, the hype that we see is like with generative AI, of course, short term, we always overestimate what the technology can do for us. And then there is the tipping point where it falls, and that means also attention will go away. And that's usually the moment where it really unfolds its impact. Yeah. And it comes back, like long term, the effects of generative AI will be incredibly disruptive. Short term, though, we still think that it can do and should do more than it actually can. And that's just human. But the moment we hit the tipping point, there will be something else taking our attention. And so it's always interesting to look at the things that we ignore.
When you talk in Europe to Mittelständler, SMBs, and corporations, are you focusing more on the generative AI aspect of AI, or more the applied one? Or for you, it's kind of all, it's not the same, but it's equally important, although the hype right now is generative AI because of ChatGPT. But I still believe, from an industrial, business-minded person, when it comes to efficiency, return on investment, competitiveness within your corporation, applied AI may be even more important than generative AI. Is that a misperception?
I think this is exactly the hype problem. So people jump on generative AI because it's so magical, not because it's very effective, or of course it is important and we will have it. And it will do things that we don't know yet. For sure there will be impact that we don't see. But applied AI, in the sense that what automation can do, how we train an AI within a business context that is made for this business context, for this organization. And they train their own AI systems, and they learn internally rather than relying on something that has been trained outside. So this of course, for an organization has more impact and is the thing to focus on. So if we take an organization in a specific industry with a specific context, then they need to train an AI, and the earlier they do that, the bigger their advantage will be, because this is different from other technologies. But the companies that implement AI now, applied AI, they will have a learning advantage ahead of everybody else. So the last ones in an industry jumping on the learning curve are so far behind, because learning is accelerating over time, that it's hard to keep up with the market leaders. So it's not the case that your learning curve is slowing down over time and the others are going to pick up. It's right now, it looks like it's more the opposite. So the companies who jump on applied AI and find ways to turn their organizations into learning organizations, automatically learning, they will have the biggest impact in a positive sense.
Okay. So for all the listeners, the medium-sized companies who may not have the resources and the know-how on one end, but feel the urge to get going, to look into this. Nobody can afford to sit on the sideline at this point anymore. Yeah. What, let's say, the top 4 or 5 steps would you recommend to these kind of companies to take, besides hiring you and you help them and guide them? But in general, what are the 4 or 5 steps where somebody listens and feels completely overwhelmed, maybe even scared, but if we can break it down and slice it a little bit more, what advice would you give?
Yeah, so right now we're still looking at a lot of possibilities. So step 1, and this is good, look at all that's possible with AI. So we just talked about there's applied AI, there's generative AI, there are different kinds of things happening. So look at different use cases. Possibilities 1, this is what can the technology do. Once I understand that, I start looking at opportunities, meaning where are my steps that all of these possibilities could help with. Not all possibilities are right for my context. So this turns a possibility into an opportunity. Mm-hmm. And from there we go into, what are your specific goals? And for that, I need to know, what am I good at? What is my business? Yeah. And those goals, then for me, is one of the most overlooked parts, and that's maybe step 4. As I look at the KPIs of whatever AI project you're starting, how do you measure that you're actually making progress in the right direction? So while you implement, know how you measure, because we're going into a world where the old KPIs don't work anymore. This is different. This works different. So obviously we want to most KPIs in this AI world have to do with learning. How much did we learn is a better question than how big was our return on investment. You need both, but the return on investment is a very old question. And it's very short-term thinking, and it rewards certain ways of thinking. And
interesting. I would like to differ, but I like to be convinced. I mean, I'm very open-minded to that.
Yeah, I think learning is really. This might not be the right word. Maybe we have to define it further, what that means to learn. But how? So when we say we have patterns that we look at in our business, there's certain things happening around our customers, our users, or internally, how do we work? These are all creating patterns. Now, can I build algorithms on top that make predictions? And this is the main thing, is that all AI systems are prediction machines. That's what they're good at. And then the third part is the feedback. Yeah. And so I would say, if you get to the stage where you say, we want to build AI into systems here, look at these three parts. Do you have the patterns visible for AI? Do you have the capabilities to turn these into predictions? And once you have that, do you have the right people to give the machine feedback, the algorithms to be trained? Enough quality feedback so that the system becomes better over time. Once you have that, you can start.
But the foundation for all of that is the data sets and the data itself.
Yes.
So you need to understand within your organization what the data are actually that's required to do this in the first place.
Yeah, so I call this visibility. I would say, like, yeah, you of course you have processes everywhere, but how visible in terms of the data is it to the machine? How easy is it to access the data? And of course, this is a mess.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, thank you. We are pretty much out of time. This was a really interesting conversation, and we should actually have a second session to go even further and deeper. So I really thank you for this. And maybe at the in the last minute or so, after you shared all your wisdom here, maybe some takeaways in regards to the key takeaways, the closing remarks, and any additional references that you would like to provide to the audience that we haven't discussed.
I would say don't be afraid. Being scared is a very human thing, and it is sometimes to our advantage, and there is an evolution behind that, why we are the way we are. And we've been training ourselves over thousands of years to become the most adaptive that we are to this world right now. And we're very adaptive to working with other people. Now we get a new player. AI is going to join the game. Now we need to work with AI as if it was a new player in that game. And we're very adaptive. What's not happening is AI taking over. That's a really unlikely scenario. And it's regulated everywhere. And because there is so much fear, this will probably be avoided at all cost. And what we don't see under the radar is that there are so many opportunities that, because of the fear we're not taking, that could make life on this planet much better. This might save our planet altogether. This might save humanity over the long term. And this is an incredible chance for us to be better.
I like the closing comment from you. Thank you very much. And with that, I would like to close this podcast, and I would like to invite you for another session in the near future to go a little bit deeper, and hopefully feel free here, the audience, to give us some feedback. If you have questions, you put them in our LinkedIn page or wherever we are going to publish this video, and then we will dive into all the answers of your questions in the next session. Cool. Chris, I appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.